She came to my doorstep at 2:17 in the morning, soaked in rain, mascara streaked down her cheeks, and a newborn swaddled against her chest. My sister, Mel. She didn't say a word for almost 5 full minutes. She just held out the baby, eyes swollen and wild, and said, "I can't do this, sophomore. I can't be her mother." My husband, Daniel, stood behind me in the hall, silent, watching. Too calm for a moment so chaotic. And now I understand why. He already knew that baby was his. Before I proceed, please subscribe now for stories where silence becomes strategy and revenge is raised in the cradle. Let's proceed. I didn't hesitate that night. I took the child, named Amelia, and held her against my chest like she'd always been mine. Because in that moment, she felt like the only thing in my life that made sense. Mel left the next morning without leaving a forwarding address. Just a voicemail that said, "She's safer with you." And Daniel? He never questioned it. Never argued. Never flinched. He just said, "We'll take care of her. Like our own." But he didn't mean like our own. She already was. Amelia grew up in a home with stability, order, and quiet routines. I did everything a mother does: night feedings, doctor visits, preschool interviews. Daniel played the perfect partner, showed up for parent-teacher conferences, read to her before bed, posted smiling photos online. And I told myself Mel had just cracked. That some women just weren't built for motherhood. What I didn't tell myself, what I couldn't allow myself to ask, was why Daniel was always so effortlessly present. Why he never stumbled when Amelia called me mom, but flinched, almost imperceptibly, when she hugged him too long. It wasn't until Amelia turned 7 that I found the box. I was cleaning the guest bedroom closet, sorting through old receipts and files, when I noticed a small velvet-lined container tucked behind Daniel's war medals and court files. It looked too new. Unlabeled. I opened it out of boredom. Curiosity. Inside, a folded letter from a private clinic. 2 paternity tests. One marked Daniel's D. One marked Blake M. Both results, 99.9% positive. My hands went cold. The ceiling didn't spin. My breath didn't catch. Instead, time froze into a single, crystalline moment of clarity. The man I had built a life beside, who I had nursed through burnout, supported through law school, built a family with, had not just betrayed me. He had done it with the one person who knew every version of my life. My sister. The only blood I had left. And they had given me the result of their mistake to raise as a symbol of their clean consciences. I closed the box, put it back, and kissed Amelia goodnight like I hadn't just learned the worst truth of my life. Because I knew, from that moment on, I would not confront them. I would bury them one bedtime story at a time. The first thing I did was stop looking at Amelia as his daughter or Mel's daughter. She was mine. Not biologically, but through sacrifice. Through sleepless nights, scraped knees, school drop-offs, tears dried with kisses and whispered lullabies. She was mine in every way that counts. And now that I knew the truth, I realized I wasn't just raising a child. I was raising a reckoning. I never told her outright, at least, not then. But I started planting seeds. Little details she'd come to notice, question, and eventually remember. We'd go through old photo albums and I'd point out how Mel never stayed for birthdays. How Daniel seemed more nervous around her than me. I asked small questions she didn't know how to answer yet. Has your dad ever told you what he did the day you were born? Did your Aunt Mel ever say where she was when she stopped visiting? And when she said no, I smiled softly, hugged her, and said, "Someday, I'll tell you a story you'll need to hear." At night, after she went to sleep, I created a private digital archive. Folder 1, copies of the paternity test. Folder 2, screenshots of texts between Mel and Daniel I found on an old iCloud backup. Messages he didn't know synced to our shared account. Folder 3, audio recordings. Some were old voicemails, others I captured after I'd begun planting microphones in the office, the kitchen, and even the glove box of Daniel's car. And I documented everything he said that could be twisted, weaponized, or concretely exposed for the day Amelia would need proof, not anger. The next step was simple: control the story before they could rewrite it. I distanced Amelia from both of them. But not harshly. Gently. I encouraged independence. When Mel called, I told Amelia she could talk, but I always hovered. I let her feel the distance her biological mother created. Because I needed her to know, love doesn't run and truth doesn't disappear for 7 years. Daniel, meanwhile, kept up the charade of a perfect father. And I played the perfect wife, calm, thoughtful, loyal. Every time he kissed me goodnight, I thought about the child he gave my sister. And every morning, I smiled as I packed Amelia's lunch and slipped in a note: be brave. Be smart. Ask questions. One day, I caught Amelia looking at her reflection a little too long. She was 11. "Mom," she asked, "why do I look more like Aunt Mel than you?" My heart didn't race. I had rehearsed for this. I crouched to her eye level and said, "You look like someone who's going to change the world." That's what I see. That night, I added a new document to the archive. A letter from Mom. Not an explanation. A truth map. A guide for when the time came. Amelia didn't need fire in her blood. I taught her to use ice. I raised her with books, calm confidence, and emotional clarity. She excelled in speech and debate. She started asking sharper questions. She learned how to break people without ever raising her voice. And every time she asked about her past, I gave her just enough to make her curious, but never enough to feel lost. I was careful not to poison her. Just to prepare her. Because when the time came, she wouldn't just know the truth. She'd own it. Mel returned to the city when Amelia was 13. She sent postcards first, little gestures of reconnection. Then phone calls, casual gifts, a birthday card that read, "Love always, Auntie Mel," as if the 7-year vanishing act never happened. I let her come around. Slowly. Carefully. Because I wanted her to see what she missed. And what she'd never get to claim. Daniel, meanwhile, began mistaking my silence for forgiveness. We hadn't spoken of Amelia's birth in a decade, not even indirectly. But he grew bolder, sloppier, more entitled. He started referring to Amelia as my pride in conversations. He signed her up for a scholarship application without telling me, wrote on the form, "Father, Daniel Blake. Mother, unknown." He left the paper in the kitchen. I didn't confront him. I just made a copy and filed it. With the others. He didn't know that Amelia saw it too. She came to me that evening, eyes sharp, jaw tense, and said, "Why does Dad write like I wasn't born to anyone?" I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "Maybe he doesn't know who you really are yet. But he will." He thought time would bury the truth. But she was raised by the one person who never forgot. Subscribe now for stories where the betrayal isn't just exposed, it's educated. Mel eventually showed up at our door one Saturday morning, smile too wide, eyes too eager. "Can I take her out for the day?" she asked, holding a bag of gifts and barely disguised guilt. I let her. Because Amelia wasn't a child anymore. She came back quiet, but not upset. That night, over dinner, she said, "Mom, why do I feel like I've been lied to?" I didn't answer. I just nodded and said, "Because you have." Behind closed doors, I updated the archive. I labeled the new folder. Mel returns. It included voice recordings of her deflecting questions, notes from Amelia's debrief surveillance, stills from a PI I'd hired 6 years earlier, now quietly following Mel's life, relationships, and everything she built from the ashes of a lie. She remarried 2 years after abandoning Amelia. Had another child. Told her new husband she had no close family. Claimed her niece was just someone she helped raise a little. Her daughter, Amelia's half-sister, would someday learn otherwise. But that wasn't my battle. Not yet. The closer Amelia got to 16, the more she questioned. The sharper her instincts became. She told me, "I don't feel like I belong in this family photo." And I told her the only truth she needed to hear in that moment: you belong to the truth. And one day, you'll get to decide what happens to the people who don't. Amelia turned 18 on a Sunday. We had cake, candles, and the usual flood of meaningless messages from people who hadn't earned her. Daniel gave her a charm bracelet. Mel sent flowers with a card that read, "For my brilliant niece, may your light never dim." A lie dressed as a compliment. That night, when the house was quiet, I handed Amelia the folder. Thick. Heavy. Years in the making. She opened it on the kitchen table where I had once fed her mashed bananas and rocked her to sleep after colic. She said nothing as she read. Nothing as she sifted through photos, emails, transcripts, signed statements, and a dated voice recording of Mel sobbing on the phone, saying, "He said we'd figure it out. But I can't do this." She loves him. Amelia didn't cry. She didn't ask why I hadn't told her sooner. She only asked, "Can I handle it my way?" I said yes. And then I watched as the girl I raised became the storm her parents never saw coming. The opportunity came quicker than we thought. Daniel's law firm was hosting a gala, a charity event for family restoration of all ironies. Mel would be there too, married to a corporate VP on the event board. A perfect circle of hypocrisy wrapped in tuxedos and curated smiles. Amelia wore black. Not because she mourned. Because she was ready. The ballroom was full of men in tailored suits and women dripping in pearls and borrowed purity. Amelia stood at the center of it all, quiet, composed, devastating. She took the mic after Daniel's introduction speech. He smiled as she walked toward him. He had no idea. "Thank you, everyone. I'm Amelia Blake," she began. "My father is in this room. So is my biological mother. And for 18 years, they let me believe I was born out of generosity, when in fact, I was born out of betrayal." There was no gasp. Just silence. Frozen. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the envelope. The same one I gave her. "This is the paternity test. This is the phone log. This is the woman who gave birth to me. And this is the man who raised me with lies." She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She simply turned and walked off the stage. And didn't look back. Mel followed her outside. So did Daniel. But Amelia didn't stop. I stood at the exit, watching them scramble. Mel reached out, pleading, "You were never supposed to find out this way." And Amelia answered, "But you were always supposed to tell me. And you never did." She turned to Daniel. "You could have been my father. But you chose to be a coward." Then she walked past them both. And I walked behind her. Like I always had. They tried to reach her afterward, calls, emails, even handwritten letters. All ignored. Mel tried showing up at her college campus one day, claiming she just wanted to explain. Amelia reported her to campus security. Daniel showed up a week later, waiting outside one of her classes, pretending to have changed. She walked past him without a word. They didn't realize the girl they created in secrecy and buried in a lie had been forged into a weapon of absolute clarity. She owed them nothing, not recognition, not reconciliation, not redemption. She changed her last name legally by the end of that year. To mine. We had lunch the day it became official. Just the two of us. No celebration. No theatrics. She handed me a copy of the court decree and said, "It's done." I asked how she felt. "Lighter," she said. "Like I finally chose myself." Then she paused. "Thank you for never lying to me even when you could have." I told her, truth doesn't make things easier. It makes them stronger. And you are. Mel went quiet after that. Daniel moved to another city, took early retirement, and stopped posting on social media. Whatever dignity he had left shrank into a small, forgettable man living far from the girl he once tried to claim. Neither of them recovered. Because nothing haunts a liar like being forgotten by the person they built their lie around. Amelia graduated magna cum laude. Gave a commencement speech about building identity in the ruins of other people's failures. She never mentioned her parents. Never had to. The room felt it anyway. I live peacefully now. Quietly. I never sought revenge for myself. That was never the goal. What I wanted was something slower, deeper, accountability raised in the shadow of their betrayal. I didn't just raise a child. I raised justice. If you stayed until the end, you already know, this wasn't just revenge. It was reinvention. Subscribe now for more stories where the knife isn't loud, but the cut runs deep.